Victor Wembanyama's shocking playoff ejection is already creating major problems for the Spurs organization. After the viral elbow sparked backlash across the NBA, reports are now spreading that San Antonio has made a surprising decision regarding their young superstar, and fans genuinely did not see this coming. Sunday night in Minneapolis, Game 4 of the Western Conference semifinals. The Spurs, coming off a dominant Game 3 performance by Wembanyama, hold a 2-1 series lead over the Timberwolves. The mood inside Target Center is tense. Minnesota needs this one. The star center was ejected in the second quarter for a flagrant foul too, after he threw an elbow in Naz Reid's face while battling for possession of the ball after a rebound. There was no ambiguity about what happened. Wembanyama grabbed a rebound and was trying to protect the ball from two Timberwolves. Then he turned and unleashed a right elbow into the chin of Reid. The whistle blew immediately for an offensive foul, but the referees weren't done. The officiating crew studied views of the play before upgrading the foul to a flagrant 2, which is an automatic ejection. Head official Zach Zarba announced, after review, there was wind-up, impact, and follow-through above the neck of an opponent. It was unnecessary and excessive contact by Wembanyama, and it meets all the criteria, and it has been upgraded to a flagrant foul penalty too. The fans at Target Center chanted, "Kick him out, kick him out," as the foul was upgraded to a flagrant 2 for excessive contact above the neck. And that was it. Wembanyama's night was over. It was Wembanyama's first ejection in his NBA career. When the penalty was announced, Wembanyama appeared to ask teammate Harrison Barnes, "What does that mean?" That reaction, the genuine confusion on his face, told you everything about where Wembanyama was mentally. He didn't know what a flagrant 2 meant. He'd never experienced it. Wembanyama's ejection with 8:39 left in the second quarter is the earliest an All-Star has been tossed from a playoff game in the play-by-play era since 1997-98, according to ESPN research. That's nearly 3 full quarters of basketball without your best player. In a playoff game on the road, Wembanyama finished with 4 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 fouls in 13 minutes. His 4 points are his fewest in any game of his career, in the regular season or the playoffs, after he slapped hands with each of his Spurs teammates on his way off the floor, with the arena sound system blaring Michael Jackson's "Beat It." Target Center had its moment. The crowd had what they wanted. But this series was far from over. To understand the magnitude of what happened Sunday night, you need to understand the season Victor Wembanyama just had. Because this isn't about one elbow in one playoff game. This is about a 22-year-old who spent the entire 2025-26 season announcing himself as one of the most dominant forces basketball has ever seen. After missing a chunk of 2024-25 with a bout of deep vein thrombosis, the 7'4" Frenchman came back with vengeance to lead his team to a total of 62 wins and a number 2 seed in the playoffs, all while averaging a double-double, 25 points, 11.5 rebounds, and 3.1 assists. The medical scare that had threatened to derail his career became the kindling for the most ferocious comeback the NBA had witnessed in years. Victor Wembanyama, as expected, was announced as the league's top defensive player. The San Antonio center was second in the voting for DPOY as a rookie, was the favorite last season until a medical condition ended his season prematurely, then left no doubt this year. At 22, he's the youngest winner of the award, and it wasn't close. For the first time ever, the vote was unanimous. The San Antonio center beat out fellow finalists Osar Thompson of the Pistons and Chet Holmgren of the Thunder entirely. No player in at least the last 50 seasons, and maybe ever, has won 2 awards unanimously. The first was his Rookie of the Year trophy. Now this, Wembanyama joins Robinson and Michael Jordan as the only players to win both Rookie of the Year and DPOY. That's the company he's keeping. Not in projections or hypotheticals, but in actual hardware. 3 seasons into his career, Wembanyama averaged a league-best 3.1 blocks per game to go along with 1.0 steals across 64 games. He led the NBA in blocked shots for a 3rd consecutive season, and generally made scoring against the Spurs feel like an act of negotiation rather than competition. Wembanyama is an MVP finalist, along with Oklahoma City's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, the reigning MVP, and 3-time winner, Nikola Jokic of Denver. The Spurs themselves were transformed. It was the first Spurs playoff game without Greg Popovich as coach since 1999, a span that covered 170 playoff victories and 5 NBA championships, and the Spurs' first playoff appearance and victory since 2019. That 6-year drought had been painful. The tanking, the losing seasons, the patient rebuilding. All of it was designed to get to a player like Wembanyama. And this season, the payoff arrived. Coach Mitch Johnson, in his first year as head coach, helmed a team that didn't just make the playoffs, they earned the second seed. The Spurs found success when Wembanyama was out during the regular season, posting a 12-6 record in his absence. Their roster depth and ability to navigate adversity with a young head coach is a big reason why many people believe this squad is ready to compete for a championship. This was the context leading into the postseason, a team built around a generational talent, a franchise reborn. And then the playoffs arrived. The Spurs opened their postseason against the 7th-seeded Portland Trail Blazers, and Wembanyama announced himself on the biggest stage immediately. His line in Game 1, 35 points on 13 for 21 shooting, including 5 for 6 on three-pointers, 5 rebounds, 2 blocks, and 1 assist. He set a franchise record for most points in a playoff debut, passing Tim Duncan's 32. Duncan attended the game along with fellow Spurs great David Robinson, the old guard watching the new era take shape. The Spurs won 111-98, and it felt like a coronation. But the playoffs have a way of testing you. Shortly after Wembanyama was presented the Hakeem Olajuwon Trophy for DPOY, he hit his head and face on the court in a hard fall in the second quarter. Against Portland in Game 2, he left the game, did not return, and entered the NBA concussion protocol. Portland took advantage, winning 106-103 to tie the series. What happened next revealed the depth of this Spurs team. Without Wembanyama in Game 3, the Spurs faced a 15-point deficit in the second half, before rallying to win 120-108 behind performances from Stephon Castle and Dylan Harper off the bench as the two guards combined for 60 points. Castle finished with 33 points, whereas Harper scored a career-high 27 off the bench. Wembanyama returned for Game 4, and the Spurs made history. They eliminated a 17-point halftime deficit and became the first team in NBA playoff history to trail by 15 or more at halftime and win by 15 or more. They won 114-93 and clinched the series in Game 5. Wembanyama had 17 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 blocks. And San Antonio never trailed in eliminating the Portland Trail Blazers with a 114-95 victory. Then came the Timberwolves, a team with the size, the physicality, and the defensive toughness to actually challenge Wembanyama in ways Portland never could. With Reed, Julius Randle, and McDaniels in their front court, the Timberwolves have had plenty of muscle and tenacity to send at Wembanyama. Minnesota stole Game 1 in San Antonio. In that game, Victor Wembanyama set the playoff record for blocks in a game with 12. The previous record of 10 was held by Mark Eaton, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Andrew Bynum, 12 blocks. And the Spurs still lost. That told you everything about the ferocity of this series. The Spurs evened things with a 133-95 blowout in Game 2. Then Wembanyama put up one of the most historic performances in playoff history in Game 3. Wembanyama delivered one of the most statistically dominant performances in basketball history, finishing with 39 points, 15 rebounds, and 5 blocks. The 22-year-old center became just the 4th player in NBA history to record 35-plus points, 15-plus rebounds, and 5-plus blocks in a playoff game. He joined Shaquille O'Neal, Hakeem Olajuwon, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in that exclusive club. He was untouchable. He was channeling the legends. Asked what he used from Olajuwon in the fourth quarter, Wembanyama said many things, but especially that spin fadeaway over Rudy. He had worked with Olajuwon, studied his moves, and deployed them on the biggest stage against one of the premier defensive teams in the NBA. The Spurs took a 2-1 series lead. They were heading to Minneapolis for Game 4, with the chance to put a stranglehold on the series. And then the elbow happened. This wasn't a random act. The entire Timberwolves series had been building toward a moment like this. Wembanyama's reaction was completely understandable, based on how physical these games have been, and what the Wolves and the Trailblazers in the first round have done to pound Wembanyama out of his comfort zone. With just 235 pounds stretched the length of his 88-inch frame, the lean and lanky Frenchman still needs to get stronger 3 years into his NBA career. Until then, opponents will try to push, bang, and foul him as much as possible, inflicting pain, sure, but also to get into Wembanyama's head. That's the blueprint. Every physical team in the league knows it, and the Timberwolves executed it better than anyone. In the instant before Wembanyama swung that elbow at Reed, crowding behind him, he had been bopped in the face by the Wolves' Jaden McDaniels, and had McDaniels hanging with both hands on his left arm. This detail matters. It wasn't as if Wembanyama woke up that morning and decided to throw an elbow at someone. He was being mauled. He was getting grabbed, held, hit in the face. And then something snapped. His teammates saw it that way too. Spurs guard Dylan Harper said, "You could see the frustration. I don't think it was intentional. It was more like, they keep grabbing me. I'm trying to protect myself because ain't no one else going to protect me." Spurs guard De'Aaron Fox offered his take. His left arm was being held, and I think everybody's taught to chin the ball. But those things happen. I think if the foul is called before that, it probably never happens. Fox's point is a significant one. If the officials had called the foul on McDaniels or Reed for the contact that preceded the elbow, Wembanyama never would have swung. The frustration had been compounding for 4 games. Spurs coach Mitch Johnson didn't condone Wembanyama's actions, but he said after San Antonio's 114-109 loss, that officials could do a better job of protecting the 22-year-old from the physicality routinely imposed on him by opponents. Just the amount of physicality that people play with him, at some level you have to protect yourself. Johnson said, every single play on every single part of the floor, people are trying to impose their physicality on you. This is the paradox of being Wembanyama. He is the most physically unique player in NBA history. 7 feet 4 inches tall, a wingspan that stretches beyond comprehension. Hands that can reach angles no other human being can reach. And because of all of that, every opponent in every game resorts to the same approach. Grab him, push him, lean on him, bang him, make him uncomfortable. The referees let a certain amount of that go because it's playoff basketball. And Wembanyama, because he's young and because he's still learning how to manage that frustration, finally boiled over. The Timberwolves had been poking the bear for the entire series. In Game 4, the bear responded. Anthony Edwards had 16 of his 36 points in the fourth quarter to help the Minnesota Timberwolves even their second-round NBA playoff series against the San Antonio Spurs with a 114-109 victory. Without Wembanyama patrolling the paint for the final 3 quarters, the Timberwolves were able to exploit the interior in ways they simply couldn't. When the Defensive Player of the Year was on the floor, the Spurs didn't collapse though. Johnson felt the remaining Spurs were phenomenal in how they responded to Wembanyama's absence. In the third quarter, they limited the Wolves to 20 points, scored 28, got 9 points off turnovers, and even had more points in the paint. 20-9. Luke Kornet gave them some work at both ends. It was 94-86 with 8:49 left in the fourth when Minnesota called timeout. De'Aaron Fox, Dylan Harper, and Stephon Castle carried the offense for long stretches, combining for 68 points. Fox and Harper each finished with 24 points while Castle added 20. These are young guards who refuse to fold in one of the most chaotic moments their franchise has experienced in this playoff run. They held the lead deep into the fourth quarter. They had a real chance to win without their best player. But Edwards scored 10 points in that late run, and 16 in the quarter overall. He is Anthony Edwards, and when the rim opens up without Wembanyama standing sentinel, he becomes a different animal entirely. Rudy Gobert got a 3-point play with 3:02 left, off a slick feed from Reed, and later threw down a dunk for a 107-101 lead with 1:56 to go. Gobert had 11 points and 13 rebounds. The front court that had been bottled up by Wembanyama for the entire series suddenly had room to operate, and they made the Spurs pay for it. Wembanyama remained in the locker room after his ejection, but he did not speak with the media following the game. He did, however, address teammates at halftime in the locker room, with the Spurs trailing 60-56. Stephon Castle revealed he was just instilling confidence and just staying in good spirits even though he was out of the game. Even in exile, Wembanyama was trying to lead. Now comes the question that has consumed every basketball conversation since Sunday night. Will the NBA suspend Victor Wembanyama for Game 5? A flagrant foul 2 carries a minimum fine of $2,000 and is reviewed by the league office for possible supplemental discipline. There is no set protocol for player suspensions after receiving a flagrant foul 2. The league has discretion, and that discretion is what makes this entire situation so tense. League rules call for a minimum 1-game suspension for a punching foul, but there is no clear outline for an offense leading with an elbow. Historical precedent exists but is inconsistent. In 2013, J.R. Smith was given a 1-game punishment in the playoffs for throwing an elbow at Jason Terry. In 2016, Hassan Whiteside was handed the same penalty for elbowing Boban Marjanovic. Both of those resulted in one-game suspensions. But there's an argument on the other side as well. The NBA could also see an ejection in the first half as something of a one-game suspension on its own and decide that is punishment enough, which would clear the way for Wembanyama to return for Game 5. Spurs head coach Mitch Johnson does not believe Victor Wembanyama will face any additional punishment beyond his ejection. There was zero intent. I think it would be ridiculous. He told reporters when discussing the possibility of a suspension. Johnson defended Wembanyama by pointing to the amount of physical play he has absorbed in the series, denied malicious intent, and said a suspension would be ridiculous. Reuters reported that Reed was uninjured and brushed off the hit after the game. A flagrant 1 foul is 1 point, while a flagrant 2 receives 2 points, an automatic ejection, and a minimum $2,000 fine. Players receive a one-game suspension after accruing 4 flagrant points. Unless the league chooses to suspend Wembanyama due to the nature of this foul, he will still be able to play in Game 5 in San Antonio, as he has not met that threshold of 4 flagrant points. It would be a surprise if Wembanyama was suspended, given he has no history of similar violations, but the punishment is not outside the realm of possibilities. The NBA is expected to announce its decision on Monday, one day before Game 5 in San Antonio. The Spurs could easily bounce back in Game 5 at home if Wembanyama is on the floor and leading the way. But a suspension could open the door for Minnesota to win 2 consecutive games without the star big man on the court, which would put them 1 home win away in Game 6 from advancing to the Western Conference Finals for the 3rd consecutive year. The stakes are as clear as they are enormous. If the NBA decides the ejection was enough, the Spurs bring their best weapon home for a pivotal Game 5 on their own floor. If the league goes the other way and slaps a one-game suspension on Wembanyama, this series tilts, perhaps irreversibly, toward Minnesota. And here's the truth that makes this such a complicated moment. Wembanyama brought this on himself. He threw the elbow, he crossed the line. The elbow into Reed's face crossed the NBA line on flagrancy. No doubt about it. It doesn't matter that he was being grabbed, held, and hit in the face by McDaniels moments before. The NBA will judge the action, not the provocation. But it's equally true that the environment created the moment. The Timberwolves have been grinding Wembanyama down physically for 4 games. The Trailblazers did the same before them. Every team that faces the Spurs knows that if you let Wembanyama play his game in open space, he's going to put up numbers that belong in a history book. So you don't let him, you grab him, you lean on him, you force him to fight for every inch. And eventually, on a frustrating night in a hostile arena, a 22-year-old's patience ran out. It will be a massive decision. The entire trajectory of this series, and possibly this postseason, hangs on what the NBA decides. The Spurs made the first shocking decision when their franchise player threw that elbow. Now it's the league's turn to make theirs. Game 5 is Tuesday in San Antonio. The world will be watching.